Alright, round 3 of the 2014 Treasure Valley State Chess Championship. 4-round tournament. First 2 games were won pretty effortlessly, but now it gets a little bit harder as I have people who are closer to me in ability coming up. So I have the white pieces. Nope. 1 second, it's being a little stupid here. It's not letting me go to my... Alright, there we go. I had the white pieces against somebody who is much closer in rating. There was still about a 100-point rating gap between me and my opponent, but my opponent has gone up to 1700 plus very, very quickly. I know he works in the hospital and he has a lot of free time. And I know in his free time, I heard he liked to do a lot of chess studying, doing puzzles. So he was going up very, very quickly. So even though there was about a 100-point rating gap between the two of us, I was 1850 at this point and he was 1719. Still, we had played a lot of tough games against each other. And this was the game I was really most looking forward to in this weekend event. I had the white pieces. Why was I looking forward to it? My opponent liked to play the Carol Khan, which is a very, very strong opening for black to play. If you know what you're doing, it's very solid. And it can be quite challenging to beat this setup if black knows what he's doing. And I had a specific idea in mind going into this game. Since my opponent I knew was very familiar with a lot of the mainline ideas, I wanted to try to hit him with something a little bit offbeat and see if I could try to get an advantage somewhere else. So knight f3 and d5. Obviously, there's a lot of different moves here that I can play, but the move I wanted to play was ed5, cd5, and then instead of a natural move like d4, maybe bishop b5, to play this move knight e5 is what I had in mind. Now, this is still book, but it's not played as often. My idea was that after knight f6 and d4, I figured he was going to play knight c6. And what I wanted to do was play bishop b5. I wanted to play bishop b5. And at this point, obviously, we have 2 attackers here. So he's got to defend this knight or play bishop d7, breaking this pin. I figured bishop d7. And now, don't play a careless move like castles. It's not letting me play other moves for some reason. If we castle, he has knight e5. And my bishop is hanging on b5, so if I take on d7, he can just play knight d7, and he wins a piece. So castles, it's not letting me play it. But here what I wanted to play was, I wanted to grab the bishop pair and see if I can make something of it. So knight d7, queen d7, and castles. So now I have the 2 bishops. I'm going to be looking for some way to open this position up. Again, by playing this line, I was hoping to just catch him in something that he was a little less familiar with, and give him some more opportunities to blunder. He actually played most of this game very, very well, which maybe means he wasn't as caught off guard by this as I wanted. But he played a6, attacking my bishop. Obviously, now that I worked so hard to get the 2 bishops, I'm not just going to trade it off needlessly for this knight. So bishop a4. And e6. So he's trying to bring out his other bishop. And I played bishop f4. And my opponent played bishop d6. And it's been obviously it's been a very, very long time, over, 8 to 10 years since this game was played. I find it interesting that I made the decision to drop the bishop back to a4. Like, I wanted to take advantage later of the game of the fact that I had the 2 bishops, but then I willingly just traded this dark square bishop off. So again, sometimes hard to think about, all of what your brain was thinking, in the past. So c3, castles, rook e1. Both sides are just developing their pieces. Rook c8, queen d3. Idea of queen d3 is I would like to play bishop c2, pinning his knight down to defending the h7 square. Because obviously if we play bishop c2 and his knight has to move, then this is checkmate. So, trying to take advantage of this light squared bishop. Now I move the knight out. My opponent improves his knight and knight f3. And now one of the main ideas in the Caro-Kann that black can play is he can try to push these two pawns over here and use it to kind of open up my queen side. So g6 first, knight e5 improving my knight, and then b5 hitting my bishop, bishop b3, and b4. And here what he's trying to do is he wants to take on c3 and then maybe play rook c7, rook c8, very solid moves, and just begin putting pressure on my c pawn here. If I push c4 and he takes, then notice that once I take on c4, he can just take on d4, and he's up a clear pawn for no reason, and he's much better. So here I have to make a kind of a crucial decision. I can't take. Do I want to bring the rook to the c file, provide more support, or do I want to take on b4? I opted to take on b4, and he took. And right away I would like to take this pawn on a6, but then my d pawn falls, and I don't really like my position. Black has some good pressure going on. Queen is hitting f2. He can bring the knight into e4, bringing more pressure into f2. It just doesn't seem very pleasant. His rook is open on the c file. I have to be careful here. So I played rook d1. Now I'm saying I'm defending this d pawn, and now I'm threatening the a pawn. My opponent played a5, a very strong move. So he's trying to play a4, kick my bishop back to c2, where it's the only square it can go to, and then just take on b2. And then he's up a pawn, and he's attacking my bishop on c2 twice. And it's only defended one time. So here I have to make the right decision. I played g4 first, hitting his knight on f5, trying to be active. And knight g7. Knight g7 is not the best move. It's much more natural to play knight d6. And that way both of his knights have access to the e4 square, which is very nice. But he played knight g7, and I played a3, a tempo on his queen. Now he needs to save his queen, queen d6. And here, very nice move. My bishop isn't doing anything for me here, and if I go to c2, he might be able to bring some more pressure against it. So I opted to play bishop a4, limiting some of black's squares that he can go to. Now if he wanted to challenge my knight on d7, he's just going to blunder a piece, because I have two attackers on that square, and he's only got the queen defending. So limiting his options in that regards. He played rook c7. Idea to play rook c8 makes sense. And I played queen d2, eyeballing this a pawn. My opponent played h5. Very interesting move to push that pawn around his king. He was trying to bring some pressure against this g pawn, so now he has two attackers. I have just the knight defending. So again, I'm sure I thought about moves like f3 here, h3. Obviously, I want to be a little careful. I know I did just push the g pawn around my king, but I don't want to get too crazy. Basically, my opponent's threatening to capture on g4. And he's saying if you take on h5, I could take on h5 with the knight. And my opponent's king is very safe, and mine is really loose with the f2, h2 pawns. But here I have to decide, push, take, or defend. I opted to take, which is not the best move. Now my opponent's knight came into the game. Now I have to be very careful. Very careful here. Because my king is very open. So I played king h1. I want to go rook g1. Start putting some pressure on the g file. And he played knight e4 with tempo on my queen. And my queen needs to also stay defending this f2 pawn, so queen f3. And f6, which is a straight up blunder. Here black is actually doing very, very well. He's not winning, but he should be thinking about ideas like redeploying his queen somewhere. Even knight g7 to go knight f5 is very nice. Black is +2 here. But after f6, this is just a straight up blunder of this g6 pawn. I was very, very happy to see this. And my opponent played rook f7. So he wants on rook g1 to be able to go rook g7. So rook g1, threatening discoveries with this knight. My opponent played rook g7. And I played rook f1, lending more support to the f pawn. And my opponent played king h7. And here, I moved the correct piece, but I did not put on the correct square. So I played bishop d1, which looks very, very strong, but it's not the best option. Bishop e8 was much more active. The problem with this move is, well, my opponent didn't respond correctly. He could have played rook g6, rook g6, king g6. And I thought I had rook g1. Okay, now it's not letting me move the rook. Computer wants me to play bishop h5, actually. Okay, now it's going back and forth between the two. It wants bishop h5, king h5, rook g1, and knight g5. And it says equals. Black is up a piece. So white must still have enough compensation there. But bishop e8 would have defended this knight. I was intrigued by this idea of just taking on h5. Knight g3 looks like a good move because he's cutting off my rook from defending g6. I have to take, and then he takes. And now I play rook f4. The idea is I want to swing the rook to h4. Rook g7. Bishop c2. I want to put pressure on this diagonal. If this knight moves, it can't really move. But if it could move, then the rook would be pinned to the knight. So he plays f5. So now he completely shuts down the bishop on that diagonal. So I played rook h4. And then took the knight. And here I'm hoping he plays fe4 so I can play rook f1. I want to cut him off on the h and the f file. And then maybe go queen e2, queen h5, and try to checkmate him. But I played rook c1. That's the other option. Threatening to just come in the back door here and start chasing my opponent's king around. I thought I was doing very, very well here. Turns out this is actually just slightly better for me. But after queen a6, this is a losing blunder. Even though I didn't play the best line here. The best line for me is to play queen f4. Queen f4 carries the idea of a mate. Wait, that's not threatening a mate on c8. Oh, queen f4 threatens queen b8 check. And then king will have to go to b7, and then there's rook c7. King f6. Yeah, this is going to end in a mate. Queen b3 looked like it was winning as well. But apparently he has rook b7 as a defense. But he didn't find it in the moment. And played rook c7. Which looks like a good move. Because if I take his rook, his free rook, queen f1 is mate. But what he missed was there's queen b8 check. Attacking his king and double attacking this rook. So after queen b8, my opponent played queen c8. And there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can take on c7 with your queen, and you're up a piece. Or you can play queen c8, rook has to take, and then rook c8. At this point, obviously my opponent could just resign, but he played a few more moves. And then he resigned here. Because he's going to have to move his king to one of these squares, and then we can just take. We have two rooks attacking g7. So, very, very happy with this game. This is one of the two games I was looking forward to playing the most in this tournament. And very happy with my performance in this game, and sitting on 3-0 headed into the last round. Let's see if we can get the job done and finish strong in the next one. Thank you everyone for watching. Hopefully you learned something from this, and I'll be back with round 4.